We needed Mafia to be remade for modern gamers. Its story and world are too good to be lost in time with terrible graphics and outdated gameplay. To roleplay as a Mafia member in the 1920s and 30s was an experience. No other game could really scratch that itch until this game came out. Let's dive into Mafia Definitive Edition and talk about why this game even exists and what people can get from it. Spoilers ahead, you have been warned. Mafia Definitive Edition released September 25th, 2020, which in my book is relatively recent, which is a remake of the original game named Mafia, which released on August 29th, 2002, a whole 18 years later. Mafia 2 was released on August 24th, 2010, and Mafia 3 released on October 7th, 2016. Both I heard were okay games, with the original being the best of the bunch, especially with the Definitive Edition being the best way to play. Overall, Mafia Definitive Edition scored really well with high 70s on Metacritic. You play as Tommy Angelo. You start off the game by retelling your past to a detective named John Norman, making almost this whole game a flashback. The main plot of the game starts you off as a cab driver in Lost Haven, who is just in the wrong place at the wrong time, where the next two main characters, Polly and Sam, come to take his taxi and make him drive to escape the cops. After you all escape, the Don, who is Eno Soleri, compensates you and takes notice of your driving skills. Thus, you and your journey into the Mafia begins. You eventually become a made man in the Salieri family and grow close to the Don, Polly, and Sam. Along the way, you find a wife and daughter during your time there and make a few other friends. Now, I won't dive too deep into the story, however, throughout the game, you fight another Don named Malero. Eventually, you do defeat him, and I was surprised to see that the story continued after this, for it seemed that this was the clean way to end the story, but there is more to it than meets the eye. I love how Tommy's outfits during the loading screens reflect on what point he is during his Mafia career, going from the cab driver to what looks like an essentially a mob boss. Throughout the game, history is being made around you, such as prohibition is in full swing when you start the game and is over partway through, and that is reflected in the billboards and signs and newspapers you see around the city. Hitler is also mentioned on the newspapers and on the radio. Not only that, but your actions are mentioned on the radio as well, giving the world more life than it would without. Speaking of your actions, Tommy really grows to be ruthless in the game.
But you, Tommy, you could run this town someday.
Well, I appreciate that, Frank.
He starts out hesitating to kill, but then grows to do what he thinks needs to be done. Seeing this character development is quite interesting. The Don also has a very out-of-character moment when he lies to his closest men about what the score they are taking is. I'm not sure why he would lie like this, except that it spurs the motivation for the final stretch of the game. Sadly, Tommy mentions a daughter, and while you get to see the connection between his wife grow from the beginning, you don't see his daughter until her wedding day at the end of the game. It just seems like a missed opportunity there. The game ends with your inevitable death by gunpoint, which is honestly the most realistic part of the Mafia. Overall, the story is why you play the game, and it keeps you engaged until the very end. It felt odd after what I would call the second act happens, that you get to keep playing, because it really did feel like all the loose strings were tied up. But I'm glad I got to play the game even more. Let's start with the gunplay. The gunplay is very basic. It's third person and was tough for me at the beginning without auto aim. Health doesn't auto heal, you have to find a first aid kit on the wall and use that instead when needed. There are a healthy amount of guns to choose from the classic Tommy gun to simple snub-nosed pistols, and of course there are Molotovs, grenades, baseball bats, and knives that you can use throughout the game as well. Hiding behind cover is essential, as you can't just run around those shooting at you to get to the objective. Trust me, I've tried. Honestly, the gunplay was very needed for the setting that you're in, but it felt very generic and didn't have anything to make it stand out. I noticed during missions that you can explore the environment thoroughly, finding collectibles and such. And once you hit a story beat, then you would have to backtrack and have a lot of gunplay, which I thought was a nice touch because I always want to explore the place while I'm unrushed before actually anything hits the fan. Stealth was also pretty basic, but I'm glad you had the option to use gunplay or stealth in most situations. There are definitely some times where you have to use one or the other, otherwise you'd fail the mission. Now the driving took some getting used to. Now I loved all of the old school cars and trucks you could steal and driving them was for the most part very smooth. I feel like the handling could have been better, however I understand it's a 1930s game. I can give them a pass there. I also had to put this on easy mode as I kept dying from car chases again and again. But after I put it on easy, I enjoyed the game so much more, and getting away from the cops was decent, fun even. The world is also just so interesting to drive through with the billboards and the radios. By the way, there's only 2 radio stations in the game. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see an auto drive feature in the game. I would have loved that, as I could just watch the world around me go by as I traveled in and around the city. There are a good amount of collectibles in the game to find, from magazines to trading cards. There really is no incentive to make you want to find them, like for example, in Batman Arkham City, where people's lives were on the line, or a side story arc was there once you got all the collectibles. But each collectible has a fun design and is something for completionists out there, something for them to do. Now, I'm not sure if this was in the original game or the other Mafia games for that matter, but in this game there is a story mode where you play the pure story. It's not like GTA 5 where you play a story mission and then you have the choice to drive to the next story mission or to do a side mission. It's purely just the story missions. You play the story, it ends, then the next story mission begins, and I appreciate that. There is a free roam option in the main menu when you start the game, and it looks to have a few secrets to come with it, and there you get to explore Lost Haven in its entirety. Now, I liked the tip of the hat references in the game for Hangar 13. For those of you who don't know, Hangar 13 is the company that developed the game. They have posters and letters which mention a company called Hangar 13 in the game itself.
See you on the other side, Marku.
No real glitches I can mention while playing the game. There were a few slowdowns for only like 3 seconds or so throughout my playthrough, but that's probably just my PC than the game itself. Some funny ragdoll physics here and there, which were charming more than frustrating. However, I did have the hardest time getting the game not to crash on startup. Okay, so let me just be tech support for a second if you're playing this game on PC, and especially if you bought the game through Steam. When I first got the game and downloaded it, the game always crashed on me when I got to the main menu or right before. It would freeze for a few seconds and then it would crash. Turns out the game has a secondary 2K launcher and really dumb promotional stuff in the game folder that causes this. I fixed it by deleting the folders and files shown there and then launching the game through the different .exe file in the game folder. I also disconnected the Wi-Fi while playing because otherwise the game would connect to the internet and that would reload all the bad files into the game folder, thus making it crash again, which was very, very frustrating. The whole issue should never have happened to begin with. As a side note, the game requires an internet connection to open through Steam. You can get around it by doing the other .exe launcher in the game folder, but still. And 2K said you must agree to let them gather data from your gameplay. Like, of all the games to do this, this is a single player game, and that should be an option, not a you have to do this to play the game. Again, I did just play the game without internet and it still let me play it just fine, so I wasn't really too worried about that. And plus, like, they can have my data of me playing the game. I'm sure they use that data to make games better, or at least I hope so. But still, like, geez. Luckily, the whole issue was fixed quickly with some Googling, but damn, if I didn't find the answers, then I would have needed to return the game. And it would sting even more because it's only the promotional stuff that's causing the game to crash. Other than that though, no real issues with the game. Overall, the game's story is what sells the game, and they decided to just focus on that. No real side missions to mention, which I prefer. No fluff, just the good stuff. The gameplay was fun, though the gunfighting was generic. By the way, Tommy in the game is known as the best shooter and driver that Dawn has, which I just thought was very funny considering how much I died and how much I sucked at the game. Getting the game to actually run was the hardest part, but after that, it was smooth sailing. Now, I recommend picking this game up if you can. I got on sale on Steam for $10 and it was well worth the cost. I don't plan on playing the other Mafia games as I heard they're not nearly as good. I also don't know what they could add for Mafia Simulator that this game didn't. Thank you all for watching. Leave a comment about your thoughts on the game. Have you played it? What did you think? And if you didn't play it, what's stopping you? And don't forget to take care of yourself, okay? I'll see you next time.
Speak your mind, say what you're thinking. Speak your mind, say what you're thinking. Just be you.